button.
The button has been pushed. All right, so let's go back over just a little bit of what Malgarion was doing while the party was doing their thing, trying to help Fizzle.
I believe that the short version, these really short version of what we had talked about was pretty much because the guards are away from they're on the edges of the compound, as it were, and it's all foresty jungled and all that nonsense. They wouldn't have a direct line of sight to him, so he slipped into something a little more comfortable and has been laying around napping, going, "Oh God, that sucked."
Which is a good thing. I think almost all the party members are kind of in that same state.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And let's see, as far as anything else, we were talking about how with how weird magic is around here. He was checking in on the dragon runestone that he made on Maraganda, and it's okay. It's not doing anything weird because it was already full, and so it's not absorbing any magic from the weird place.
Yep.
And how he was considering trying to conjure himself up a better thing of armor. But the idea of trying to put that much energy and mana into something just... No, we can work on that project later.
Yes, project for a future day. So that'd bring it to... So the party then went out and got the medicine with a little help from Tedrix, getting some okay for them to raid the royal pharmacy, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Fizzle couldn't find anything. Like, she had just, I guess for transparency, I gave Emily 3 different sets of ingredients that she could find. One that would just make like a symptom treating simple medication for like a month. One that would give some lasting relief to this situation, and then one that would cure her for years.
Mm-hmm.
She succeeded the first roll, flubbed the second, and almost succeeded the third roll. But in the end, it only was able to end up with like some short-term relief daily medication. Like, she's going to be popping pills for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then the party returned. And Fizzle set to work, basically distilling down her herbs and other components into little pills. Not long after that, Riddick, Yav, and Sika showed up with a roast pig, or dressed in guard uniforms, which they'd used to sneak in, with a roast pig and a cask of mead. And I think that'd be where Malgarion would rejoin the story.
Yeah, probably.
So,
probably the most reasonable way of going about it.
The other events of that night were that Fizzle went off with Yav for a bit for him to look at her, since he is, though he's used to dealing with gladiators and blood sport participants, he is a fairly good doctor, so he took a look at her. Though the only advice he could give her was the very advice that earlier in the day she said, if you're going to suggest that, don't even bother. So he didn't. So yeah, Malgarion is met with food, drink. What's he do during that time?
Honestly, probably just kind of observing the conversations going on and such, and just kind of lounging about, because while it doesn't actually take any like sizable effort for him to assume his humanoid forms, it's one of those things of like when you're too tired to do something that would be normally pretty simple, and you're just like, I'm just not in the mood.
Exactly.
And so he's pretty much staying outside, laying down, wings folded back and everything. It's kind of looks like a big cat with how he's laying.
Got it. So during this time, he would observe that Akvis has been hard at work at something, basically with the remains of Vidus. And eventually she gets a mild success that grants her, like, Vidus wanders out. He's part bone and part black mana at this point. Like, she's kind of filled in what remains, and with ethereal energy, and the other half of him is still on the table, inert. She's working very hard at this, and with everyone's current state of exhaustion, she eventually passes out. Also during this time, while Fizzle's away with Yav, Jing is working at the whole pill crafting thing, and has been told, if it turns blue, stir harder, and if it screams, what did you do? Or something like that. No. It was, if it screams, come get me.
I think the dragon has a few concerns.
Well, as Yav and Fizzle wandered off, Yav basically turned and goes, it's never going to scream, is it? Nope. So eventually, though, let me see what else was going. Tedrix eventually retires to bed as well, and he's kind of been separate and withdrawn most of the time. Which there's an understandable there. He has just lost his queen, which Tedrix and his obsession with the crown.
Yeah.
And also the exhaustion.
Also the fact that his home nation was like weeks away from being wiped off the map.
Yes. Which that has been getting better too. They've now been succeeding at battle after battle, pushing back and reclaiming our islands at a rapid rate. Which kind of happens when you cut an army off from its main supply of resource.
Which, this brings up a question that Malgarion, like, when that information was relayed, that Malgarion would have asked, though.
Mm-hmm.
What were the lives lost of his nation? Because they may take the islands back, but given that this was a rushed war, there's no way that you got everyone to evacuate in time, kind of a thing. And so, how sizable of a population loss has the nation sustained? Because if it's, and even if it's only 15%, the outlying parts of your country are always going to be like, farming and other supplies that support the metropolitan areas, and so therefore. Even if they only lost 10 or 15% of their total population, at minimum, there's going to be some significant social turmoil. If they lost anything more than 15 or 20%, but if there's anything even approaching 50, stuff's bad.
And I think things are bad right now. I think that, well, Malgarion probably can put two and two together. There's probably a reason the king is taking an entire week to get together some form of reward for you. Especially considering the dwarfs were talking about how they would leave when the coffers ran dry, which might have been in a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, things are probably pretty bad. Teedrix is probably very aware that things are bad. And I wouldn't say that they'd have an exact number at this point for how many losses they've had, because essentially all they could really do at this point would be count refugees, which are sizable and numerous.
Mm-hmm. And I think Malgarion's looking less as like an exact number, more of just like if you've lost more than 30% of your population, your nation is fundamentally dead.
Yes.
So he's kind of like, Teedrix, how likely do you think it is that you've lost about a third of the population of your people? Like, he'd ask it in a more tactful way, but yeah.
Yeah, I get you. That would be something we'd have to do with Jimmy. No, I don't think is available right now. But
I will make a note of it.
Yeah, make a note of it. But yes, there are a lot of refugees, but it's also worth noting that one of the primary resources with this war was dead bodies, considering they were fighting against necromancers.
Mm-hmm.
Though they tended to use more ghosts than zombies. But there is kind of I guess you could probably get this just from while traveling. There's a lot of refugees, and there's kind of also the sense that the conflict's not ever going to be completely over, that they're going to be finding ghosts and things like that for generations to come.
Yeah, because even a single necromancer being out there means that they can teach other people. Cults happen, and the moment that they realize that they got their supply lines cut off, they're going to go to ground, because they know that anybody with even a slight bit of intelligence knows they cannot continue to win a war that stretched that thin with no supplies.
Indeed. But with that side tangent kind of thought out, the night progresses. Eventually, Activist wakes up, having literally just kicked herself out of her chair and falling to the floor. And she immediately goes for the codex, having Vidus attempt to sneak it from Teedrix's bag to not wake him. Him and her have to have a conversation about that, and then she approaches it and talks to it some more.
Mm-hmm.
This is when she reveals to everyone that... Actually, we're probably going to have to go back to listen to this, because I remember that there were certain things she did not reveal to the party about what was discussed. I think she did reveal that this thing that keeps contacting her in her dreams does know about the Lord of the Tower and doesn't seem to be a friend of it.
Yeah, we can touch base with Sarah for some of that later. Like, because we already, like, between you and I, kind of recapped most of what was, most of what happened. Any of the finer points like that, we can just double check with some folk.
That's true. I just wanted to go through to see if Malgarion had any significant reactions or thoughts on any of the events of that night.
As far as thoughts, he has lots of thoughts. Like, he is fully I shouldn't say fully expecting. He has suspicions about some of the members of the group. One of the things that I was at session for was the whole, like, hey, we want to, if Marcus is up for it, we don't want to, like, make you guys feel like we're taking some of your team, but if he's up for it, do you guys have any concerns about us talking to him about joining us? Malgarion's gonna be like, go for it. He's a little bit suspicious is not quite the right word, but he doesn't doubt their intentions. Malgarion's a narcissist, and he doesn't think that most people are capable. So he's like, but this was one of my wards that I'm trying to cultivate here. You're gonna get him killed, aren't you? But it's his choice, so whatever. he actually appreciates the fact that all of these planeswalkers that are running around in his mind under him, because to get narcissistic fucking dragon bastard, he actually appreciates the fact that it's obvious that a number of them are running around with secrets and that they've kept them so well, and after this big traumatic event, they're like, oh, we're gonna go and talk about it now, and he's like, one of these days, you all will make great Machiavelli villains, or manipulators, I should say, not villains. If only we just gotta get you that little bit of extra mental stamina so that you don't just blurt all of these things to people that you've known for a week.
This is true. So, and that goes to, as the night progresses, you do notice that Riddick deliberately seeks out each of the members of the group and talks with them a little bit and asks them some questions.
Mm-hmm.
He even wakes up, he goes into Teedrix's room and does this. But finally, he goes out, as the party's winding down, long after most of the other people have gone to sleep, he wanders out to the lagoon. And as he wanders, you notice, like, he has always kind of like radiated these heavy auras of blue and white mana. He has patterns woven into his form.
Mm-hmm.
Various enchantments. He lifts up his hand, slips his fingers into the pattern, and unshapes it. And the form of his human form just melts away, leaving behind, as I described it, he has an Anubian jackal's head, leathery wings, the body of a lion, or the torso of a man, the paws and lower body of a lion, and is like a Egyptian sphinx cat. He has no fur at all. And at a quadrupedal gait, he walks up and flops down next to Malgarion.
Next to or in front of?
Next to. And simply says, "It is good to finally stretch out."
I'm going to go ahead and say that, like, at that point, as he had been walking up, Malgarion had actually been, like, fully laying down, so, like, head, because he's got the longer neck, like, head snaked down, so it was, like, laying next to his forelimb, and as he shifts and starts walking over, Malgarion lifts his head, fully. He's still laying down, but his head is lifted fully upright, and his tail still coiled around himself. And when he says it's good to stretch out.
I was wondering when you were going to drop that, guys.
And I should say, he's almost like, I'd say, about half Malgarian size. He is not a small sphinx either. He cricks his neck, and you hear a number of very old bones pop. Well, it is what it is. It's easier to associate as a human with most. I mean, you're a dragon. No matter whether they understand you or not, or at least what you are, there is a visceral reaction in the human mind to scales, wings, horns, and claws.
Large, sharp teeth.
Large, sharp teeth. Me, they just tend to look at me and go, "What the hell are you?"
Marks of a lack of education.
True enough. So, as the leader of this band, I wanted to ask you something. Well, a couple things. What is your take on what's going on all here?
Miss Teedrick still asleep?
Yes.
The necessary brutal wake-up call of a culture realizing that its backwards outlook on their own superiority against a foe that they had to run away from finally bit them, and now they will have to pick up the pieces and hopefully not repeat their own mistakes.
Teedrick seems reliant, insistent on putting down the groundwork to ensure they don't.
Good.
I don't believe that he will be following you to wherever you will go next.
I suspect it is such. He's... As much as I may disagree with the opinions that he was raised to have, he is a man who is defined by his loyalty. I have no doubt that if there was a reason for us to call on him where we needed his assistance with something, that he would come. But his first loyalty is here to his people, and his, well, as you said, if he's intending to try to fix things and establish this groundwork, as you said, I believe that I did my job well enough. And it is better that he stays, because those nobles are going to need some perspective slapped into them.
This is true. Though he was very blunt with me that he did not want to be gone forever, that he would eventually rejoin your group. He just felt that all that you had achieved could be potentially lost if he had not gotten the ball rolling, so to speak.
He's right in that. And if he ends up deciding that he is no longer needed by his crown, then I can think of a number of uses that might help cultivate him further into I was going to say respectable planeswalker, but he's stubborn enough in his loyalties that I think that he's already achieved that title. A storied planeswalker.
There is something that concerns me, however.
I would be disappointed if you weren't concerned about a number of things.
You have felt it too, correct? The unnatural ripple.
Yes. An artifact of this, or if it's something deeper.
I've seen a lot of things in my travels. I have a...
Here's a question.
Oh.
I apologize if I may interrupt for just a moment, but... We're both too tired for dancing around the subject, so I'll be blunt. You look like the years have not been exactly graceful to you. How old are you?
I've honestly lost an exact count.
Old enough then.
I am easily closing in on my 1200th year.
Respectable.
It's well beyond what my species normally lives. I've extended my life through transmutation. Every time I take a younger body, it's the younger body. Though, I know that the inevitable is the mind still ages.
The soul and the spark in the mind, yes. What I wanted to ask, in regards to, related to the odd sensation that we were discussing, there was a tangential thought that I had had. You are somewhat older than I am. And based on your demeanor, I can only assume that you've been a Planeswalker for longer. Is it just me, or does it seem like from what annals of history we can glean from the planes near here, this is a very awkward way of phrasing it, and I apologize. Is it just me, or does it seem like the number of stable, self-sustaining planes is dwindling? Every single one of the planeswalkers here comes from some plane that is ripping itself apart, myself included. Well, not quite ripping itself apart, but unstable, not formed properly. And I don't know if that's just always been the case, or if it's a recent concern.
The honest truth is, there is always some form of something going on in every plane. There is always a nation-destroying plague,
Josh, you are cutting out really aggressively.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. So you said the truth is there's always what now?
There is always some form of catastrophe going on a plane every minute of every day. There is always a gigantic inter-empire war, a nation-destroying plague, a invasion from another force. There's always something.
I agree and understand with that. What I'm talking about is things like this plane, with its magic being broken. The Pixies plane, where the only way that its mana stays stable is through artificial intervention. So many planes on the verge of ripping themselves apart. The people are replaceable. The empires come and go, and they will ebb and flow as time goes. But entire planes themselves being unstable is the thing that I've noticed as it is not all planes, but the percentage of them that are that degree of unstable seems alarming.
What is the best way to put this? It actually plays what you discuss plays heavily into my central philosophy. For eras, I was a law mage and a member of the Tribunal of the Blind Eternities. But I always...
Really?
Yes, still am, actually. I moonlight doing this. However, I always struggled with the fact that no matter what, there always seemed to be some form of an instability. There was always somewhere that was more broken that couldn't be fixed. Still there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was saying something.
So, eventually I sought why. And I came to only one conclusion. The only thing that exists as a constant in all of the Blind Eternities is change. Planes like yours and the Pixies And this place, they're anomalies made by choice or by development. There is no one standard in the Blind Eternities. They all have quirks. Some are just more extreme than others. This place was formed when an individual took it upon themselves to make a choice in action. And as a result, the mana was ruined. The Pixie's plane, Vryn, is a side effect of attempting to extend the natural order. Their plane was not going to be as mana rich as it should be, but rather than letting that pass to the natural order, they found a way to extend the potency of their mana. Yours was by design, which, yes, is a rarity.
I will say that you are the first person since my spark ignited to actually know where I am from then.
And at this point, Malgarion's like, he's narrowing his eyes at the Sphinx, but it's not in like a suspicion way. It's like I'm so proud of you.
Oh, please. Do not be flattered. There's dragons of your level of intelligence, and then yet a plane that doesn't have regular mana narrows it somewhat.
Fair.
But no, that rippling wrongness does concern me, because that is new to me.
Same. Unfortunately.
Though I do have a theory on it.
I'm listening.
What do you think the purpose of a Planeswalker is?
It's a bit early in the evening for such deep philosophy. Are you asking a universal purpose, or my personal belief in what a Planeswalker should be?
You're on a natural level. Everything is a natural mechanic. Why do sparks ignite? What causes them to ignite? It's a mystery that no one has ever figured out.
And I believe that no one has figured it out because each spark, as much as each spark's reason for igniting is as unique as the Planeswalker themselves, and so therefore their purpose is as unique.
Ah. And that, there's an
Wait.
element...
I apologize, I did not mean to cut you off. I was actually going to ask, because along that line of thinking, I would be willing to bet, even knowing nothing else about you, that your current outlook and agenda and your work within the tribunal is all informed not just by who you are, but for the exact reason that your spark ignited. Am I wrong?
You are close. My spark ignited out of an apotheosis of philosophy. That I realized that I was wrong. I spent so much time trying to insist that there must be an order to everything, when I found out that, in reality, everything is the complete contradiction of that. Change is the only true natural order. But that is the thing. I believe that Planeswalkers all need to find their own purpose, but I also believe that we hold a naturalistic purpose as well. A mechanic that the Blind Eternities uses to its advantage, if that makes sense.
So you are stating that if the blind eternities were a machine, that the Planeswalkers are simply a specialized cog within it.
Exactly. Specifically...
Does that not undermine your ignited apotheosis in regards to there not being a law to the universe?
Oh no, there are laws. Let's face it, nature has a series of laws. The weather moves in currents. Trees grow. People live, people die. There are absolutes. But in the end, the only true...
Malgarion is smiling ear to ear, as much as a dragon can.
Yes. The only true absolute regarding people and societies and the realms themselves is that everything eventually changes. Whether it grows and dies, whether it fades with time, everything eventually changes. But
stagnant bond eventually evaporates or grows into life. Yes.
And that's what I believe that our purpose is, at least from a naturalistic perspective. The only thing that sets us apart from other mages, other than our walking abilities, is that we, unlike them, can pull mana from places we are not. When you pull mana, you can pull it from your home, or wherever else you've been. In essence, if the universe is a machine, we are the oil. We keep things flowing.
What did you say? If the universe was a machine, we're the what?
If the universe is a machine or a series of cogs, Planeswalkers are the oil. We keep things turning and flowing.
An interesting position.
Now consider this. I am certain that by this point you've heard of the hunts for Planeswalkers, the bounties, the Lord of the Tower.
Yes, apparently I've managed to myself and Pixie. Well, I suppose that's a separate issue. But yes, I'm aware.
Consider this. What? So we have an individual out there, capturing and imprisoning our kind, essentially. And those that are still free...
Destroying our kind.
Exactly. And those that are still free are becoming afraid to travel, to move. They want to bunker in where they feel secure and safe and wait out the storm. If we are the oil, what is happening to the machine?
Again, a fairly well thought out position.
It concerns me. It is the only thing I could come up with for why the universe would suddenly glitch, like in Vryn.
Shudder.
Exactly.
What is then the tribunals? Because as I understand it, the tribunal is not exactly a very centralized body. But, if I may infer for a moment, you at least have contact with others, otherwise it will not be in any way an organization of any sort. What do the other members of the tribunal think of this matter? And not in regards to the shuddering or the pulse or glitch or whatever you want to call it, but specifically the Lord of the Tower. Because this has been going on for some time.
Honestly,
and they have not been subtle.
Many of the magistrates within the tribunal believe that it is a great disruption of life within the codex, or within the codified law. That is the problem with scrying. It's an inexact science, and so much of magic is based on nomenclature.
Yes. If I may make a suggestion, how familiar are you with the political body of House Casimir? Blanking on the name of their plane, I apologize.
I know of House Casimir.
Are you familiar with the Planeswalker Kethis?
I am not familiar with any Kethis, no.
As I understand it, he's a fairly newly ascended individual who House Casimir personally had slated, and he's keeping an eye on them. They are currently crippled, but also known associates of the Lord of the Tower. If you want a lead, I would advise digging around them. They're probably busy trying to keep their heads above water after we opened one of their portals and shoved a large quantity of explosives through it.
Oftentimes, non-magical solutions are the best solutions.
The house is reeling. It is not dead, but crippled. And if you want to try to find a way to... If you want to try to find information for someone who has been in communication, that is the only place I can suggest. Oh, I will say in regard to this Lord of the Tower, beyond... I agree absolutely and entirely that their demeanor towards Planeswalkers is egregious. And is, on its own, worth putting them down if at all possible. I will say that if you ever have I'll be direct again. If you ever have need of somebody to fly overhead and absolutely destroy them, his allies assaulted me. He has standing orders that anyone like myself is to be assaulted, taken in, killed, tortured, whatever they have going. I may be away from my people, but I am a sovereign, and he has declared war. I will destroy him given the opportunity. If you are willing to allow me that opportunity, I would accept it.
He holds out his hand, and a small ball of light appears in his before the paw. And he simply states, "Bailiff, please add this testimonial to record. Added to the growing case under Lord of the Tower. Charges: assaulting a sovereign lord of Imotera, inducing a war, without sovereignty of his own. Within the little orb, you see, like, it's a golem.
Mm-hmm.
It's a feminine golem that has a somewhat Anubian jackal perspective. It looks like a high-tech version of Anubis.
So, if I may, it's kind of a clockwork version of the dudes from Stargate.
Kind of, yes. And she bows and takes a small stylus and begins to, with some form of magical ink, note down everything that has been reported, and then the orb fades out. You now hold legal case.
That is appreciated.
I shall also have the minor charge of lèse majesty added to the list. But considering his current case is largely a series of assaults, murders, and kidnappings, civic charges will be added to a lesser case. So I do have one final question before the night grows too long.
Yes.
What do you intend to do from here? Your group seems resolved to go and find more medicine for your pixie on another world. But what about you?
I believe that is a question that we should always be asking ourselves, but for the sake of your curiosity.
You know how sometimes when people, like, tongue their teeth and thought, he's kind of doing that as he looks away from the Sphinx and looks towards the rest of the estate where everybody else is kind of going about their thing. And he kind of inhales and sighs a little as he's obviously trying to come up with a presentation for this.
They are all young. They are short-sighted is not accurate, but they all see a problem in front of them, and they want to address that problem, which is evident. You know where I'm from. You know who I am.
And he kind of turns away from the group and looks towards the Sphinx, and the very dull glow that his eyes have dims a little bit as his pupils expand and go a little up as well.
I have fathered an entire brood, and I raised them to seek their own agency in things. And while they are more fleeting creatures, this pack here needs to learn how to steer their own direction. You asked what my opinion was of what a Planeswalker is. I spoke about the macro, our existence and role within the universe, within the planes. But I believe that the purpose of the Planeswalker is ultimately dictated by the Planeswalker. addressing one problem at a time, and there's something to be praised in that. But with the insight that they can have as Planeswalkers, they could do so much more, and I will be trying to cultivate Planeswalkers that old bastards like you and myself can feel more comfortable with leaving the blind eternities in the hands of. Because there will come a point when this group disbands. T-Rex ends up finding some sort of apprentice, either on his own plane or maybe even another Planeswalker. Fizzle may find the same. Any of them might. And if they are insufficient to teach another Planeswalker, then Planeswalkers as a whole in the future will suffer for it. I'm going to stay to teach them. And as far as my opinions on them being able to go to Ren to help the Pixie with her problem, that is a decision that they made without coaxing, without arm twisting, manipulation, or bribery. From what I was able to overhear of the conversation, it is an agenda that was offered, not one that was requested. They're finally showing initiative. So, I'm going to go with them. I'm going to see if they can keep that going and if we can nurture that. Because especially with the dwindling number of Planeswalkers because of this Lord in the Tower, we need to make sure that what we do have is as good as we can get them. Because as you say, everything changes. Eventually, by its very principle, this Lord in the Tower will be dealt with, and then the pieces will begin to move again. And if they don't, frankly, it won't be our problem because everyone will be dead.
Ever the pragmatist.
Blessing is my curse. But the Lord in the Tower is the problem immediately in front of us. We must look at the one that comes after, whether we are there to see it or not. I will help Planeswalkers, and you probably will as well. But ripples expand. They cover a wide range. This is my purpose within the planes.
So then, as an additional question, might you need someone to maintain your numbers if T-Rex stays behind?
Given that as I understand it, Marcus is also likely going with you, I would say yes, because I intend on nurturing them, but also probably fighting a war against this interplanar issue. And I'm assuming that you have someone in mind.
I am always searching talent for this little moonlighting I do. I might have a few individuals. Maybe one could be of use. And they would be fairly green, in need of some direction and toughening of their feet. Though, Some have lived, let us face it. Some have already gained plenty of experience in being a mage, though not much in being a planeswalker. I come across all sorts.
I imagine so. That does remind me of a tangential point. There was another ward within this group who apparently ran off at some chasing a mark of one form or another. If you hear anything about a planeswalker with crystalline wings, I would like if you would let me know.
I will do so.
As for your offer of additional help, where we're going, I believe that this group is going to need all that it can give. There's a wisdom in not putting all of your eggs in one basket, but the enemy is someone who has been preying on isolation. I know there is very little in regard of central organizations for planeswalkers, but I believe we should do what we can to consolidate our assets. If you have someone that is in need of guidance, I will accept it.
I will see who I can pull. Well, I believe that answers the only questions I had. Have a good night, Dragon Lord.
I have one more question before we do call it evening.
Yes.
I realized that the way I was going to ask this at first seemed unnecessarily accusatory. Not my intention. What is the tribunal doing in regard to this Lord in the Tower? Because everything that I have heard in regards to testimony from their allies or from yourself or anyone else who's had any involvement in it, they seem unchecked in any way. Nothing has been done to counter them. So what is the tribunal planning on doing aside from collecting evidence?
The most unfortunate part of the tribunal, the thing that I find greatest in my frustrations in my position as magistrate there, is that without outside aid, we can do nothing. We are not a member of any plane. We are not... We would be greatly hypocritical if we took on an autocratic position to enforce laws on planes which we have no bearing nor right to exist within. It is a very slippery slope. So, if one wronged can bring to us the Lord of the Tower, we have all the evidence we need to convict. However, we cannot go after him ourselves. This, as I've stated, is one of my greatest frustrations.
Then allow me to state this. If I am the one to find him, you will be given a corpse.
And that, too, would be justice of a form.
Now, as someone who is more familiar also with the Tribunal and its methods, I am one of the 5 governing voices of an entire plane. If the other 4 were in agreement, that we stated that we were calling the declaration of war against myself and my people as exactly what it is, would that in any way enable the Tribunal to move and be in any way decisive instead of reactionary?
Unfortunately, no. Well, it would give us the right to be called to intercede. However, without being able to find the individual and serve him a writ, we cannot begin legal proceedings against him.
But it would enable the Tribunal to at least take some action instead of sitting by and observing.
It would. It would allow us to begin the proceeding of attempting to serve him a writ, and which is why so much of the case up to this point has been trying to find him, so we can be ready for that. I have lost 4 aides in this process, driven mad by the attempt.
Well,
really quick, what was his title again? As far as within the Tribunal?
Magister.
well, Magister, I do agree the night is drawing on. I'm going to discuss something with this little pack of Planeswalkers, and I may take a detour before this trip to Friend. I understand that the Tribunal's hands are held in too many regards to do anything truly decisive and to simply end the problem in a one broad stroke. But if the problem is a matter of litigation and bureaucracy and a lack of home plane in which to try and enact laws, but you are a believer in the primal laws of if you attempt to harm me and mine, then I will bury you, then allow me to ground your case within a plane where those laws are the laws.
That would greatly simplify proceedings, yes.
Excellent. I will try to get a hold of the other 4, and I will try to call a meeting. I hope that it will work. As a whole, the Broodmasters agree that working together is valuable to my plan. We cooperate, even if we don't personally want to use each other's methods.
It is not an unfavorable system, from what I have seen.
The dragon seems to be like actively trying to suppress a shudder as he kind of takes in a very slow breath. Because as far as in his head, he realizes he just said, "I'm going to go back to my home plane," and there's a brief moment of panic that he will not let out.
I will do what I can to assist you. But for now, I do bid you a good night.
Good night, Broodlord.
He just kind of bows his head.
And he wanders away.
Okay.
Midway back to the house, you feel a flow of blue and white mana as he reassumes his form of Riddick and heads inside.
Neat.
And with that, I believe we're out.